I may well edit this out. Let's just have a look. Best healthcare. Oh. We're there. We are there.
We're in there.
Okay. Sorry. I just remembered Google thinks I'm in the US for making these, so I actually will take this. Hello, and welcome to an emergency episode of the Medico Digital podcast. I have Ben Lawrence here, our SEO team's fearless leader, healthy AI skeptic, and general general purveyor of all things Google. And the reason I've pulled Ben from his tireless work on some of our clients' websites to talk a little bit today is because Google have recently run their annual IO. Do you call it a conference, Ben? Conference
Yeah. I
showcase?
think that works.
Yeah, and Ben was putting a few of the updates that he'd seen from that conference in the channel, and I wanted to talk to him about it. And I thought, why don't we just get the cameras rolling while I do talk to him about it, just in case anything of interest that other people might be interested in comes out. So, hi Ben, and welcome. You okay?
Hey. Yeah, all good.
Nice. Looking forward to a slightly rainy bank holiday weekend. I think the good weather's just about to subside, just in time for me to go camping, which I'm very pleased about.
Yeah. Nothing as ambitious as camping. But we'll
No
we'll
big
we'll
plans.
be outdoors and exploring. Kids get muddy and stuff like that. So yeah, be
Nice.
good.
Cool. So yeah, Google I/O. That's what I wanted to quickly talk to you about. And I was aware it was happening. I kind of didn't even think to check in to see what was going on. I felt like I kind of knew what was going to be announced, and I never know whether what is announced at these types of events is actually the next big thing and that we should all be paying attention, or if it's just a list of things that are kind of been worked on in the background to keep shareholders happy, generate a bit of buzz, and it's all going to fade into the background. So I guess keep that in mind as we talk through, because I guess it's very difficult to predict which is which in terms of what's come out there. But I think one of the big ones, something that hasn't been a secret because they've been trialing it in the US, and it looks like it's going to be coming more globally very soon in the same way that AI overviews did, is the AI mode tab. So in your understanding, I'm aware you're not in the US, you haven't had early access to it, so you're probably going off secondhand information. But what is the AI mode tab, and how is it different to AI overviews?
Yeah, so basically AI mode is replicating what you might get in Gemini. So it's giving you a full AI experience so that you can, chat to the AI model there. You can find out answers to your questions, but it's not going to be the traditional blue links in a list, giving, you click through to the websites that you're looking for. And in terms of the difference between that and AI overviews sit at the top of traditional Google search, and they, I guess they provide a sort of a bite-sized explanation of what you're searching for, whereas AI mode is intended to be a lot more, I guess, conversational and something that you can sort of use follow-ups to talk to the AI a bit more. It'll be a bit more personalized. So it becomes that full Gemini experience, I think, that we're familiar with, but now it's just right there in Google search for people to access.
Yeah, interesting. So the way I had been thinking about it, and I think incorrectly, was Google's kind of response to ChatGPT search or Perplexity becoming potentially more natural ways of searching and seeing that as a behavioral shift. Google kind of panicking and wanting to bed that into their search experience. But you're right. Obviously, they've already got Gemini. They've got their own version of this. As far as you're aware, is AI mode basically another word for Gemini, and they're just putting that into the search ecosystem? Or do you know if it's going to be any different from the Gemini experience?
That's what it seems to be. For one thing, they've mentioned is that they're going to have ads in there, or at least they're testing that at the moment. If there aren't ads in Gemini at the moment, maybe there will be too. We know Google likes to get ads in as many places as it can. But yeah, I think for the most part, it's going to be very similar to that Gemini experience from what we can see. I think what's interesting with like ChatGPT search is that almost seems to be a response to what Google currently is,
Mm.
and so that it's almost like the reverse there, where they're trying to sort of replicate using their AI capabilities what we get in traditional Google search.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And you just touched on what my next point was going to be. So was it announced that they're going to be bringing ads into AI mode and AI overviews? And if so, did they talk about what that's going to look like or give any information on how it's going to work?
Yeah, so it's already there in AI overviews. I'm not sure if it's just in the States or if it's here in the UK as well. But it is there, and that's there for all users. I think in AI mode it's being tested at the moment. So I don't think everyone's seeing that.
And did they have they shown? I guess if it's live in the US, we could go and just try and look at some ourselves after this, and maybe I'll do that because I haven't seen any ads in AI overviews, and I'm not clear on exactly how that would work. Is it just kind of sponsored citation links within AI overviews?
Yeah, it's sort of got a little block from what I'd seen from some screenshots, and so there's a little block at the bottom of the A overview with, and I think it did indicate that it was a sponsored link rather than something that's kind of integrated into the A overview and is very discreet. I think it is clear for now that that is an ad that's being shown, and I
Okay.
think they could get into legal issues, I suspect, if they tried to be a bit more sneaky about it. I don't know the laws around it all that well.
Yeah, interesting. I feel like everyone's known this is coming since Google started to tinker with AI, and now it's here. So it'll be really interesting to see how that develops. The next point, and I just realized I've not said this word out loud ever, so I don't have a clue if I'm saying it right. Agentic search. Is that how you would say it?
It's how I'd say it, but I only read it as well, so
Yes.
I'm just assuming too.
Okay. I'm not going to say it again, but AI agents researching and purchasing. What on earth is that about? Is this one of those? Yeah, it's kind of maybe slightly possible. This is a bit of a showcase. Don't expect anyone to be going and doing all of their purchasing through AI this month. What was kind of said about a I'm going to say it again, agentic search.
Yeah, so I think the idea and the premise behind it is that before Google was sort of like, we're going to present the information for you, and you can go off and do the things that you want to do. The idea of agentic search is that it now wants to do the doing for you and basically streamline that process. The idea is um, you might want to purchase something, and you can sort of tell the AI agent, this is what I want to purchase. I want the cheapest possible deal with that, and it will go off, it'll do the research for you, it will go through even the checkout process for you. It won't make the purchase for you, but it will fill in your information, your details, and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the premise behind it, to sort of understand what like adoption of that might be. I think that there are some hurdles. I think one of them is going to
Mm.
be like, do people know about it for as a starting point? I think the other thing is going to be, do people trust it? And I think at this point, and this is something in other areas that Google is clearly trying to get to, is a lot of very sensitive data and information. Like, you're going to have to give it your address, you're going to have to give it
Mm.
your card
Bank
details,
details.
things like
Mm.
that. You may not need to do that for all the functions in it, but I think that is going to be a big concern. So I think if there is adoption of agentic search, I suspect it will be slower. It's hard to know exactly how big it will become, but I think that there will be some hesitancy on
Yeah,
adopting that.
that's really interesting. So I guess for us, people that are working with websites, people that are trying to stay on top of how search behavior is changing and what some of those opportunities look like, obviously just keeping an eye on this and making sure that it actually does become something that people want to pursue is going to be the first case, because it might be something that's a little bit more difficult to implement than maybe they've made it sound. But it sounds like from what you're saying, if it's not initially as far as, hey, what festivals are on next week, gives you a list. I want to go to that one, book it for me, and it goes and pays for the tickets and kind of sends it all to you. If it's not quite that far, I suppose there's going to be a need for website operators, digital marketers to be kind of bending to what's useful for agentic search in the short term. So if it's not taking your bank details and going and actually making a purchase for you, then maybe it's taking you as far as you can. So it fills in all of those forms, and then you get an email back to fill out the final bank details or something like that. Maybe feels like there's going to be a lot of flex and trial and error in making that sort of thing work.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be what will be interesting is SEO has always been a lot about kind of making things work for the bots, and I think that this is another way in which we might need to try and work out what does work and what doesn't work for the bots. And so like in medical, we often have kind of free form fields where you write some text, maybe a little bit about whatever condition or issue that you're coming up with, and that might be challenging for agentic search and to take you far enough. And so again, like there might be inconsistent fields where there's different naming conventions or different markup that's in there. And again, that might be challenging. So I think it's going to be interesting seeing what we need to do to make sure that this kind of thing can work for the websites that we're working on. And so, a lot of testing, I think, will kind of need to go into that.
Yeah, super interesting and quite exciting in terms of the opportunities that I think that could open up. The other thing that caught my eye in terms of the update that you'd put around anyway was nice to see some confirmation of validation of the approach I think we've been taking, where I think somebody said optimizing for AI in terms of the content that you're producing is the same as optimizing for traditional search. I think in theory that makes complete sense, because when you get down to kind of brass tacks, what you're doing with SEO is trying to prove that you are the most authoritative and relevant for any particular kind of search. And it would make sense that the same thing's going to work for AI, because to give you the best information, the best, most up to date results, they're going to need a way of deciding who's the most authoritative and relevant for whatever it is you're talking about as well. And it would make sense, especially for platforms like Gemini or AI mode, that would be built on Google's index already. I think some of the others use Bing's index, or maybe their own proprietary ones. I saw someone using the Brave browser, I think, for maybe Perplexity or someone like that. But good to know that they're not trying to completely diverge, and at least for now, the art of SEO, I think, stays roughly the same, and doesn't necessarily need a whole divergence for the industry. I imagine you were relieved to hear that.
Yeah, and to be honest, the solutions that Google have been coming up with for identifying, what content to show and who's trusted, like it doesn't suddenly change because maybe there's a bigger AI process behind retrieving that. That they're still using, exactly as you said, like those same kinds of approaches. I think there is a little bit of nuance to what we potentially, or how we might need to pivot a little bit. So a few things that we are aware of. For instance, a lot of AI models, and we actually ran some tests or on this. Just really struggle with JavaScript. They don't render it. Gemini does, because it's already got Chrome working on that as people sort of through their own machines, and it's processing that. But other models like ChatGPT and things like Claude, they struggle, and they can't render JavaScript. And so that is one thing to be aware of. Is actually we need to be a lot more cautious in our use of JavaScript, because before we just thought about can Google manage it. Now, or at least for the future, and as things progress, we need to think, can the AI models, can they handle it? And that could create some problems for certain businesses down the line.
It feels almost comedic that this technology, which is coming up with novel chemicals and solutions to age-old problems, breaking records every other day, stumbling at something like JavaScript. I remember seeing a sketch about Doctor Who and the Daleks, where the Daleks are taking over, and they're off to take over the world, and they open the door and get stuck at the top of the stairs because they can't get down. It feels kind of analogous to that. Cool. I mean, they were the main points that I think jumped out at me. Obviously, a lot more was announced within there. Was there anything else that I haven't mentioned there that you thought was really interesting or really important? And maybe if not, what was your favorite piece of news, or the one that kind of caught your eye the most?
Yeah, I think what is perhaps most interesting to come out of this is that Google and the other AI tools continue to sort of this sort of black box approach to what's going on in AI at the moment, like what the data looks like. For traditional search at the moment, we get Search Console that gives us
Mm.
impression data, it gives us clicks. We get Google Analytics, which tells us, the traffic sources that we're getting data from. We still have we AI overview data, clicks, impressions, that kind of thing, still won't show up in Search Console, and Google have said they still have no plans to show that and share that. We have no data on what is going on in AI tools themselves, and we see traffic coming from these sources in Google Analytics, and that's all we get. We can't see what types of queries people are searching for. We can't see the impressions, and so it definitely felt like one of the takeaways again was like we people were asking these questions, and again it was just, we're not giving you that data. We don't want you to know, and so I think that was one of the kind of, not my favorite takeaways. I think it
No,
was an interesting
important.
takeaway.
Yeah, I feel like that follows a bit of a trend with Google. If you go back to how much data we had and how great, in hindsight, how great Universal Analytics was, and that being kind of morphed into GA4, a little bit more restrictive. I think the same thing's happening on the ads platform. The Under the guise of kind of privacy protection, the amount of data that you can get gets less and less each year, and it's becoming more of a black box. And it feels like they're trying to roll that back and really take that out of the hands of marketers. So I guess we're more and more reliant on third-party tools and kind of manual reviews and more guesswork, I suppose, which makes our lives a lot harder. At least it's a level playing field for everybody, but it is super frustrating that it's not going the other way and being more and more transparent. Um, but I'd imagine there is a profit incentive in there somewhere if you dig hard enough for the ad platforms. Um, cool. Just before you go, what I wanted to do was have a quick look at AI mode to see what it looks like. Cool. So this is what it looks like when you hit AI mode in Google at the moment. I guess that's probably going to change quite quickly and bring it more into the actual search feed as it goes. But it's not too dissimilar to Gemini, ChatGPT, anything like that. You've just got kind of a text box that you're typing into. And I was having a look a minute ago for just like really basic healthcare related searches. So I did best hip surgeons London as an example of a fairly common medically related search term. And it's given me the same thing again. So it gives you uh, links through to, or we'll click through them in a minute because it looks like the URLs are actually still within Google. But what my kind of initial thought was is like, where's it going to be pulling this information from? So then up here I've got, can you see both tabs or just one tab? Can you see
Yeah,
that?
yeah, can see both.
Yeah. So I did the same search in traditional Google to try and see where they were coming from. And I think the way that they have structured this is really interesting because it's who the person is, what they do, and then it goes immediately just to talking about their rating, which when you go onto, so that's Mr. Vivek Gulati, I'm probably butchering his name, but it's pulling the Google reviews rating there. So he's got 110 5-star reviews. Mr. Zamir Shah, 132, 4.9. If you go back, that's exactly what that is pulling as well. So at least in that sense, if you do the same search in ChatGPT or something, it's certainly not going to be the same kind of structure and not necessarily just pulling from Google, which it seems to be, which is in some ways a relief that it feels relatively organized and easy to understand, at least in this
I think
stage.
there's an interesting thing there, because one of Google's advantages is that they have a huge amount of data kind of at their fingertips. They already have this massive index of the internet. They have
Mhm.
things like Google Business Profile with this kind of information. We've had and Bing tend to be more vocal about sort of pushing this, but they keep talking about structured data and schema and things like that
Mm-hmm.
to help the AI models understand the information that's coming through there. I think what we've got here is Google Business Profiles really easy for AI to understand because it's got these very
Really
consistent fields
structured.
that it can kind of pull through, and it can feel, I guess, more confident about what the data really is. It doesn't have to be that as interpretative. And so I think it's interesting to kind of see how they've done that and they've approached that, and that it's very much pulling through that Google Business Profile information there. And I think when and I've not looked into this for a few months, but I think when ChatGPT or Search GPT came out, that was people did local searches, and it kind of really struggled with that. Like that was one of the weak areas,
Mm.
at least at the moment, for it. But Google is really good at local, and so it's not that surprising to see it tackle this in what seems like quite a good way, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and who knows if it stays like this, but the immediate thing here is Google reviews seem to be a massive, massive problem. Or not problem, opportunity, I suppose, in that these guys all have a ton of Google reviews. And then it's kind of giving you this best of the rest. Mentioned in fewer reviews, and it's got some
That's interesting.
summaries of what people are talking about in the same way that you're seeing a lot in platforms like Amazon at the moment, and that's a pretty good use case for AI of summarizing as many reviews as you can to see the consistent themes. Then it gives you kind of some more information and a bit of a disclaimer here. But yeah, I think you're right. Structured data seems to be the way to go there, or something that's pulling on. I may well edit this out. Let's just have a look. Best healthcare. Oh. We're there. We are there.
We're in there.
I've not heard. Oh, okay. Sorry. I just remembered. Google thinks I'm in the US for making these, so I actually will take this. So I've not heard of First Page Sage or Cardinal Digital Marketing. We're there. I'm a little bit annoyed we don't have a link. Like, what is that about?
Yeah,
So let's see. First Page
I'm
Sage.
I'm
That's
actually
pulling up.
interested. Okay, I was wondering what would happen when we click the links, because one of the things that's come up with AI overviews is I think that the stat is something like 45-48% of AI overview links take you through to another Google search. Um,
Mm.
and often in inappropriate ways, sometimes even for like brands and stuff like that, where it just makes so much sense just to send the user to the brand's website. Um, so I was interested to see
Yeah.
what sort of crops up there, but there is definitely this intent behind what Google is doing to keep users in the Google ecosystem.
But yeah, we've been using this for about 5 minutes now and haven't had a reason to get off Google yet.
Yeah,
It's not like it's linking you straight through. I'm guessing something like that would take you, or it just changes the sources on the right, and then you can go through and click through.
yeah. I
But
mean, at least
that
those
doesn't.
sources on the right are fairly prominent,
They're
which
prominent, but
is
it doesn't like First Page Sage. You can click on theirs and you can go through to their website. It's not the best user experience. Just a big picture of some cars, and you can kind of see something about their website here. You can go through to their website. But presumably, if you're looking for, you might want a list of agencies and then probably to click through to their websites if this is the user journey that you're looking on. Can't get through to our website. Victorious, you click on this, um, they're not here. It's First Page Sage, Lupex Digital Search Business Group. So it's
yeah.
not great experience just from looking at it like that. And I'm not just saying that because it hasn't put us at the top. I dare to say once this rolls out to the UK, it might look a little bit differently. Um, the other thing that you just reminded me of is I don't know if you've been following any of the recent trials that have been going on with Google. I think there's a really high profile one at the moment between Google and Apple to do with or whether this was what the trial was about, I don't know. But there was a lot of stories about one of the Apple execs testifying, talking all about the amount of money Google are paying Apple to be the default search engine. In that, there was a load of information about um, the Apple exec saying that AI search was going to be a better way of doing things, and that was probably going to take over. And at some point, Apple would be having something like ChatGPT search as a default option, or the option for that to be a default option instead of Google. Google then came out with a press release and they said that the queries are growing. Google queries are growing. I thought that was really interesting terminology. I can't remember exactly how they worded it, but it's a little bit ambiguous of what is a search, and is it just the fact that they're trying harder and harder to keep people on Google? So everything we're doing here is, well, that's a search for first page sage. This is a search for cardinal digital marketing. It feels very odd and slightly at odds with kind of what Google has always been for content creators, which is there's like a reciprocal benefit there of Google get all of this content and be the gateway to the internet, and people get traffic in return, and ability to kind of monetize the content that they're creating. Without that, it feels like the internet might implode at some point in the next few years, where there's absolutely no incentive anymore to create that kind of content because all the platforms are trying to keep within their own ecosystems, and all you're really doing is optimizing for AI is now your audience rather than an actual person, and you're just trying to get their agentic searches to come to your website and make some of those actual decisions. So it's websites could look quite different in the next few years, I think.
I
Um,
I I suspect we will see sort of a decline of web publishing um, uh, throughout this kind of process, and I think that it will then probably burst. And you know, like a lot of these, you know, the AI agents are going to be reliant on up to date new information. You know, if there's a new procedure that comes out or new medication that's produced, like it needs to know and needs to be able to draw from various different sources. If people don't have the incentive to create that information, then yeah, there is sort of an issue there, and I think that it may come to a point in maybe a few years' time where these AI providers are kind of looking at the internet and saying, actually, we need more
we need that.
information. We got to incentivize this. And I think most other people are aware of this. I think they're probably aware of this, but I think that they
Mm.
want to kind of ride that wave as long as they can with paying, you know, content creators or whatever as little as possible while they pull as much as they can from ads. At some point, I think that will change, but I think it will be
Something's got to
an
give.
interesting wave to ride for AI. But one thing that's interesting with all of that is I think an Apple exec did also come out and basically said that Google searches are shrinking in
Yeah,
Safari.
that's what I talked about, and I think it was
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to remember, and I think it was the first quarter ever that had happened.
yeah, and it's obvious that they're measuring different things from Google. Like presumably Safari measurement and the data from there is just the literal searches inputted into the search bar, whereas Google, as you said, like is probably counting these clicks to.
I just pressed the wrong button. I tried to stop sharing my screen. But yes, I think the bit that I just cut off that you were just saying was that Safari is measuring the actual searches, whereas Google is probably measuring multiple iterations of people clicking around on the Google platform, which I think is sneaky, but it's kind of their prerogative, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. I've taken up far too much of your time already, and I'll let you get back to it. Is there any other parting thoughts for the two people that maybe make it this far in the podcast?
I, I think within all of this, you know, there's a lot of announcements that I think will have small impacts on SEO on search. I think the one thing that has the potential to be a big impact is AI mode. I don't
Mm.
think, as it stands, it's going to shake things up yet. But and as it is just a tab on in Google search. But I think that what will happen is at some point, you know, Google's going to make sure that they refine the model and that kind of thing. I
Mm.
can see a point where they do something radical and they say AI mode is now default search mode, and now you have to go through a tab to get to traditional search mode. Or they sort of have a mix and they're kind of like pick your
Mm.
preference, or you know, whichever one was the
Or they
last one you
decide
were
based
on.
on the query, maybe.
Yeah, and so there could be all sorts of things. At that point, that is when I think we might see quite a very big shift here, and um, I think a lot of it will come down to user behavior, how much people want this kind of thing, how much of a risk it is to their traditional search
Mm.
monetization, and how well they can monetize AI mode. I think all of that's going to come into that, but that I think is where that's the tipping point, I think, where things do shift potentially a considerable amount at that point.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you talked about them refining the the way it works. And I'd imagine that their number one priority, which you just mentioned there, is the monetization. Like that is what they'll be working on. How can we make sure that we're getting as much ad revenue through AI mode as we are through traditional search? And at the point that they crack that, then it doesn't matter to them and they can flip it over. I think what they won't do is undercut their current advertising models, and
Yeah.
kind of risk any of that revenue by making any moves too soon. But hey, it's interesting. At least gives us keeps us on our toes, gives us something to be aware of, gives us a path forward, and it's going to be change in the next 6 to 12 months, which I'm excited about. I'm an optimist. I think it's good.
Yeah, I'm
Let's say.
wary.
Okay, cool. Let's leave it there. Thanks a lot for your time, Ben, and let's speak soon.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.